Welcome back to The Explainer, everyone. Today, we're unpacking a pretty profound and honestly kind of striking allegory from our source material about mortality, time, and the ultimate cost of greed. It's one of those stories that sounds like a modern thriller, but it actually carries some ancient, universal wisdom. The title we're looking at is The Trust That Cannot Be Returned Till Judgment Day. It's a highly visual narrative, so let's just jump right into the mystery and look at the visuals that bring this whole concept to life. So imagine being exactly 25 years old forever. I mean, at first glance, that sounds like the absolute dream, right? The ultimate fountain of youth. But think about watching a whole century pass by while you remain entirely unchanged. Everyone you know grows older, society evolves, the world completely transforms around you, and you are just stuck. Our source material uses this exact premise, not as some cool superpower, but as a deeply tragic consequence. Part 1. Frozen in Time, a Century of Solitude. Okay, let's dive right into this bizarre and haunting scenario to see where our protagonist ends up. We find our protagonist completely alone in a foggy graveyard, and he's entirely unchanged after a full 100 years have passed by. The story immediately establishes this setting to show us that outliving your natural timeline, it's not a blessing. By placing him in a graveyard, surrounded by the stones of a world that has totally moved on without him, the author's creating this surreal and terrifying hell on Earth. He's eternally young, but eternally isolated. Part 2. A Gift from the Sky, the Divine Hourglass. To really understand how he ended up in this eternally frozen, lonely state, we need to rewind time a bit and look at the inciting incident. The story begins with this absolutely beautiful celestial event. An hourglass actually descends from the sky, bathed in a blinding, gorgeous golden light. But here's the catch. This isn't filled with normal sand. This hourglass literally contains the exact finite seconds of his lifespan. It's a physical, tangible manifestation of his life. It's a gift handed directly down to him, representing the exact amount of time he's been allotted on this earth. Now, listen to the explicit and absolute divine instruction that accompanies this gift. It says, "Do not give this to anyone, do not sell it, do not waste it, just keep it safe." The text totally frames time not as some commodity you can trade or carelessly throw away, but as a sacred trust. It's a massive responsibility. You can't barter with your time, you can't buy more of it, and you absolutely shouldn't squander it. Your one and only job is to protect it and use it properly. Part 3. The Shattered Trust, an act of greed. Because instead of revering this extraordinary gift, the protagonist makes a fatal, irreversible error. And this brilliantly illustrates the tragic turning point of our story. We've got a direct comparison here. On one side, you have the sacred rule, just keep it safe. On the other side, his immediate destructive action. He actually smashes the hourglass in a pure act of greed. The source text makes it super clear that greed was the driver here. Maybe he thought breaking the glass would let him access all the time at once, or maybe he thought he could control it better. Whatever his flawed logic was, his greed directly violates that sacred rule. The immediate result is, well, visually stunning, but utterly catastrophic. As the glass breaks, time itself comes to a dead, silent stop. The shattered shards of glass are suspended in the slow motion freeze in midair. He literally broke the vessel of his time, and in doing so, he broke his own relationship with time. He didn't gain more of it, he just completely shattered its natural flow. Part 4. A Century Alone. The Consequences. Let's look at how this builds into that bleak reality we witnessed at the very beginning of The Explainer. This timeline perfectly maps out the sheer weight of his punishment over a whole century. At year 0, the hourglass is smashed. In that moment of greed. Bam. By year 50, we see this stark contrast. The world is moving on rapidly. Friends grow old, families expand, generations shift, and human progress just marches forward, leaving him entirely behind in a stagnant existence. And finally, at year 100, the culmination, he is still 25, totally alone in that foggy graveyard. The world has completely replaced itself, and he has zero place in it because his timeline stopped a century ago. The source text gives us an incredibly specific cinematic cue to summarize his emotional state. An extreme close-up of a single tear falling from his eye. It's such a quiet, devastating image. That single tear represents the immense weight of his isolation and the crushing realization of his mistake. It's the profound regret of knowing he was given a perfect gift and he literally destroyed it through his own actions. Part 5. The true meaning of time. The moral. The crucial point here is understanding the deeper philosophical and moral warning hidden within this tragedy. Because this isn't just some fantasy story about a magic hourglass, it's an allegory for every single one of us. The source material clearly defines exactly what the hourglass represents. The divine trust is actually Allah's gift of age and time to humanity. It's a sacred allotment given to every person. When we start viewing our lifespan not as our own infinite property, but as a finite trust temporarily placed in our care, wow, it completely changes how we value every passing second. You are the guardian of your own time. The allegory warns us of a pretty stark reality. If this trust is broken, the consequences aren't just reserved for the afterlife. Breaking the trust guarantees a literal hell in this world itself. And how do we break it? By committing sins, by carelessly wasting our time, or by acting out of greed, just like the man who smashed the glass. When we do these things, we isolate ourselves, we stunt our growth, and we end up stuck in a graveyard of our own making, watching life pass us by without any true purpose. So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought, knowing that this trust cannot be returned and cannot be refilled until Judgment Day. How are you treating the unreturnable seconds of your own hourglass? Are you keeping it safe, or are you letting it slip away? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today, and I really highly encourage you to sit with that question. Catch you next time.